This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Gehring.
Up, and away. The bulls run on Wall Street, sending the blue chip Dow index up triple digits, reversing its recent losing streak.
Banking in aisle 5. One of the Dow's top performers today, Wal-Mart, as the world's largest retailer takes direct aim at the banks, making its biggest push yet into financial services.
And second acts, Sam Waksal is back after spending years in prison for insider trading in the scandal that ensnared his friend Martha Stewart. He's now planning an IPO for his latest biotech venture. Those stories and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Wednesday, September 24th.
Good evening, everyone. The blue chips were red hot today. The Dow rallied after 2 straight sessions of big losses as investors snapped up stocks following an upbeat report on housing. The Dow surged 154 points, a gain of almost 1%. The Nasdaq shot up 46, and the S&P rose 15 points. Healthcare stocks were among the biggest gainers in the S&P. And even though oil prices gushed higher today, with crude rising more than $1 a barrel, energy stocks trailed the broader markets, with ExxonMobil and Chevron among the only 3 decliners in the Dow.
Well, among the biggest winners in the Dow today, Wal-Mart, shares of the world's largest retailer, rose about 2% after it announced an all-new service. Now, for years, Wal-Mart has vanquished competitors with its low-price strategy on retail goods. Now, it's taking direct aim at banks, offering a low-cost checking account to consumers. Mary Thompson has more on the retailing giant's latest push into finance.
Everyone knows you can get almost anything at Wal-Mart. Socks, groceries, TVs. And come the end of next month, a checking account.
The customer will be able to come to Wal-Mart and pick up that account, and for a $2.95 fee, be able to purchase that starter kit.
With the starter kit, Wal-Mart clients can open a GoBank mobile checking account, a low-cost FDIC-insured account managed by Green Dot, a bank holding company Wal-Mart holds a small stake in. Here's Green Dot CEO Steve Street.
There are no NSF fees if you accidentally bounce a check. There's no overdraft fees. There are no minimum balance fees or requirements.
And GoBank customers won't be shut out because of a poor credit history, meaning Wal-Mart will be selling a product that could bring some of the 43 million Americans the FDIC says are either un- or underbanked back into the banking fold.
Wal-Mart and Green Dot will make money through an undisclosed revenue sharing agreement, making GoBank the latest of a growing number of financial services Wal-Mart provides its customers. Services like check cashing, wire transfers, and bill payment. Like the products on its shelves, Wal-Mart prices its financial services below rivals, giving clients another reason to stop and hopefully shop at its stores. Here's Wal-Mart executive Daniel Eckert.
Customers who engage in our financial services tend to find it more convenient to use the one-stop shop of Wal-Mart, and will end up not only conducting their everyday money services with us, but then going on and proceeding and filling a basket according to their needs.
As for Wal-Mart's needs, any boost in sales would be welcome. The retailer's struggling as its low-income clientele keep a tight grip on their wallets, even as the economy shows signs of expansion. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Mary Thompson.
Another Dow component making news today, Home Depot, on reports that fraudulent charges and even cash withdrawals are now showing up on credit cards stolen in a massive data breach at the retailer. Eamon Javers joins us now from Washington with more on the transactions and how banks are trying to block charges before they're even approved. You know, Eamon, I was really surprised to hear that this breach is even bigger than the one at Target. So tell us a little bit more about those fraudulent charges.
Yeah, that's right. We've been talking to some of the banks today, and what they're telling us is that this is going to be a lot more damaging than the Target breach, partly because the Home Depot breach lasted for a longer time. Banks are saying that Home Depot was breached for at least a week, and a lot of data left the servers during that period of time. That means there could be a lot of victims out there. And what we're starting to see is some charges, fraudulent activity on consumers' credit cards, everything from groceries to things that you'd purchase even at Home Depot itself being fraudulently charged. Now, most consumers though, are not seeing this damage because usually the banks are the ones who eat the damage when there's fraudulent activity on these cards. A lot of the banks are protecting the consumers from really feeling all the pain of all these hacking attacks.
But if this problem gets big enough, Eamon, even though the banks typically do, as you say, eat those charges, I can well imagine that some banks might want to say, hey, this was your problem, Home Depot. You ought to at least share in some of the costs of reimbursing these consumers.
Yeah, that's right, Tyler. And there is a big fight right now in Washington behind the scenes between the banks and the retailers, both pointing fingers at each other saying, hey, you're the one who should be paying for all of this damage out here. This is very, very expensive stuff. You could be talking hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more. And so the fight now is over the liability for that. Whose fault really is this? And how can you trace each individual charge to a particular data breach? That gets difficult, and what the retailers are saying is, yes, the banks have a lot of data on what's been charged, but you can't necessarily say that that bogus charge was due to the Home Depot breach. So how can you apply those costs to Home Depot? All of that is being fought out now here in Washington.
You know, the other thing, Eamon, it seems like, I mean, this may not be true, but it seems like that consumers are not as angry on this Home Depot news as they were when they heard about Target. Is it because that consumers have what they the so-called thing of data breach fatigue? In other words, that they are, you know, tired of hearing about this, or maybe they're just too used to hearing about breaches. It's just, you know, that's the way things are.
Yeah, that's right. You get numb to this, right? I mean, these headlines are out there every single week, and we all say, you know what, it's just another bad story out there. People assume this is going on, and because they're not feeling that financial pain themselves, they're not getting really agitated about it. The problem, though, is that could lead people to get complacent about security. If you don't feel the pain, then you're not incentivized yourself to go out there and do everything you can to protect your own data.
Eamon, thanks very much. Eamon Javers reporting. Well, as Susie mentioned just a moment ago, some sweet housing numbers today, in contrast to yesterday's somewhat sour report on the sales of existing or previously occupied homes. Sales of newly built homes surged in August to the highest levels in 6 years, shooting up 18% from the same month a year ago on a wave of buying in the Northeast and out west. That didn't, though, seem to help the shares of the nation's biggest home builders today. D.R. Horton, Lennar, Pulte, Toll Brothers, all modestly lower. Shares of KB Homes really got hit, down more than 5% after that company posted third-quarter sales and profit that were short of forecast. They blamed weather delays and troubles for some would-be buyers in securing mortgages.
Two Federal Reserve Bank presidents were talking about the Fed's next move on raising benchmark interest rates. Newly installed Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester wants to see the Fed overhaul how it communicates its policy changes, basing it more closely on economic data targets. Meanwhile, Chicago Fed President Charlie Evans says the central bank has to be patient about raising rates and confident that policymakers get it right.
Before the Fed raises rates, we should have a great deal of confidence that we won't be forced to backtrack on our moves and face another painful period at the zero lower bound. We should be exceptionally patient in adjusting the stance of U.S. monetary policy, even to the point of allowing a modest overshooting of our inflation target to appropriately balance the risks to our policy objectives.
Evans also said he's, quote, very uncomfortable with calls to raise interest rates sooner rather than later.
Well, with the possibility of a rate hike on the way, however soon or later it might be, investors are paying close attention to the financial sector, which has outperformed the Dow Index this year. And it's not just the big money center banks. Regionals have been strong. But the same can't be said for the insurers. Morgan Brennan explains the divergence and the outlook for both.
With the possibility of an interest rate hike on the horizon, some investors are betting on regional bank stocks for big returns. Companies like PNC Financial and U.S. Bancorp are among the names that have helped fuel a rally in the financial sector this month. Unlike bigger peers JP Morgan or Citigroup, regionals are not as affected by regulatory changes, since they have simpler business models that directly reap profits from commercial and personal loans. Analysts say that means these stocks stand to gain from higher interest rates.
We believe the outperformance in regional bank stocks this month is a reflection of the market's view that short-term interest rates will go up in 2015, and that in our view 2014 is an ideal time for investors to begin accumulating shares of regional banks.
Atlanta-based SunTrust Bank is one top pick among analysts. Stern Agee's Terry McAvoy says the bank will benefit from the ongoing housing recovery in markets like Florida. He also looks to the Midwest, which has enjoyed a stronger economic recovery, for regional winners.
Our top pick in the Midwest is Fifth Third. We think the company will continue to grow loans above the pace of the industry, and that the bank's high level of profitability is not reflected in today's stock price.
But other analysts are looking for buying opportunities in underperforming industries within the financial sector. For example, insurance companies. Names like Genworth Financial, which is down on lingering concerns about its long-term care insurance business. Analysts on average expect that stock's price to rise more than 30% over the next year. And Aflac and Prudential Financial could offer similar returns.
I think people are just slowly, gradually coming to see that insurers are just like banks, that they're going to benefit significantly in a rising interest rate environment.
Like all stocks, regional banks and insurers could face headwinds in the coming months as well. There's a possibility of a natural disaster which can hurt insurers' balance sheets short term. And for the banks, as interest rates rise, the possibility that people won't deposit as much money, choosing to put more of their hard-earned cash to work in other investments. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan.
Still ahead, a blast from the past. Sam Waksal, the man who went to prison for insider trading along with his friend Martha Stewart, is back, and he has plans now to take his new firm public.
Regulators are reportedly investigating whether bond giant PIMCO artificially pumped up the returns of one of its popular funds. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Securities and Exchange Commission is looking into whether the PIMCO Total Return ETF bought investments at discounted prices and then used higher valuations when calculating the value of the holdings. That could make it seem like the fund made more than it did.
Someone who knows all about the reach of the Securities and Exchange Commission is Sam Waksal. He served 7 years for insider trading when he ran the biotech company ImClone, a scandal that also sent Martha Stewart to federal prison. Now, 5 years after his release, Waksal has been raising funds for a new biotech and planning his return to Wall Street. Sort of. Meg Terrell has more.
Sam Waksal is ready for his second act. The details of his first are well known. He founded the drug maker ImClone, which developed the cancer medicine Erbitux, served 5 years in prison on insider trading charges, then emerged in 2009. He then founded a new biotech company, Cadman. It's based in the same building in New York City as his old company, now owned by Eli Lilly. Cadman's been operating as a private company with Waksal as chairman and CEO. As part of his settlement with the SEC, he accepted a permanent bar on acting as an officer or director of any public company. Now, Cadman plans to go public, Waksal says. Because of his bar, Sam Waksal won't be CEO. Cadman is bringing on Waksal's brother, Harlan, to be CEO and president. Sam's title will be Chief of Innovation, Science, and Strategy. He's likely to face scrutiny from the SEC, but Jacob Frankel, a white-collar crime specialist at law firm Shulman Rogers, said he expects Waksal to be careful not to cross lines that would put him in jeopardy. The SEC declined to comment.
Given his track record and given the desire for new drugs coming to market, I'd say investors are certainly willing to give him a chance. And certainly the more financial-minded will remember ImClone and ultimately got acquired by Lilly. It was very successful and a lot of people made money.
Lilly paid $6.5 billion for ImClone in 2008. Waksal's new company also focuses on cancer drugs in addition to marketing medicines for hepatitis C. So can he do it again? Cadman plans to file the paperwork for an IPO later this year amid a record streak for biotech IPOs. Then the market will decide. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Meg Terrell.
General Motors is steering a lot of its efforts to the Far East. The automaker says it expects to sell more than 3 million vehicles in China for the second year in a row in 2014, with sales of top-tier brands like Cadillac and Buick forecast to grow by 40%. GM also plans to launch 60 new and upgraded models over the next 3 years in the Asian nation, now the world's biggest auto market.
The struggling smartphone maker BlackBerry is out with a new device called the Passport, which has touchscreen technology, a full QWERTY keyboard, and a very distinct square shape, about the size of your passport. BlackBerry says the unusual shape will help users read and edit spreadsheets and other documents. Investors, though, not impressed, sending shares 0.5% lower today. Meanwhile, in news involving other tech companies named after fruits, Apple's latest iPhones may have broken sales records, but it's pulling the plug on fixes needed for their new operating system. The update released today was supposed to fix glitches in the new software in those iPhones and iPads released just last week, but along with blocking some phone calls, some users say the patch interferes with Apple's touch fingerprint security system. Apple plans to advise users on what to do as quickly as it can.
Citizens Financial makes its trading debut on the NYSE today, and that's where we begin tonight's market focus. The company, which is the U.S. banking unit of the Royal Bank of Scotland, is the second biggest IPO this year, after Alibaba, of course. It raised about $3 billion from its offering, even though shares were priced at $21.50 below the expected range. The stock closed higher by more than 7% to $23.08. CyberArk Software also started trading today and was a big hit with investors. This Israeli data security company raised nearly $86 million in its initial public offering, and it priced at $16 apiece, well above the expected range. The CEO says that CyberArk security offerings are unique.
CyberArk introduces a new layer of security that actually protects organizations on the inside. Billions have been spent on trying to keep attackers out. Our customers, we help them defend from attackers that made it into the network or are attacking from the inside. This is our opportunity to really go and expand globally and hit on those levers that have brought us here.
And look at those shares. They skyrocketed 87% to $29.93. Reports that Pfizer approached activists about a possible merger pushed up shares of both companies today. This comes after Pfizer abandoned its $114 billion bid for AstraZeneca, which would have allowed it to move its headquarters abroad in a tax inversion deal. Shares of Pfizer rose slightly to $30.31. Activists also up about 3% to $248. Well, the toy wars just got ice cold. Hasbro has inked a deal with Disney to market dolls based on the blockbuster film Frozen, taking the rights away from rival toy maker Mattel starting in 2016. The toy maker will also make dolls based on other classics like Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, and The Little Mermaid. Shares of Hasbro rose almost 4% to $54.95. Mattel off more than 1% to $31.67.
Vail Resorts reported a wider loss in its fourth quarter, partly because its expenses rose, but its results were mixed. Revenue did climb, topping estimates, and its season ticket sales are ahead of where they were last year. Despite that, the stock shushed more than 1% to $86.04. Walgreens reportedly looking into selling its infusion services business in a deal that could fetch about $1.5 billion. Infusion therapy is when you administer specialty drugs intravenously. The drugstore operator has hired Bank of America to run the sale process, according to those reports. Shares up slightly to $61.52. There's also buzz that Starz, the pay television company, is putting itself up for sale. Multiple reports say the movie cable channel has retained an investment banking firm to seek a possible buyer. One possible taker might be 21st Century Fox. Shares of Starz popped 5.5% to $31.23.
A deal is a deal, and another setback for oil giant BP. A federal judge ruled that business owners can keep the payouts they receive from BP after the 2010 Gulf of Mexico oil spill hurt their businesses. BP argued that a flawed funding formula in its $50 billion settlement process gave money to some businesses making questionable claims, and that some should be forced to return those funds. And coming up, the big decision and the big risk that one small software company had to make in order to grow and how it could be a model for others. The second part of our series, Small Business Matters, is straight ahead.
Yale beats Harvard. not at football, at investing. Yale University's endowment posted a 20% return in the just completed 2014 fiscal year, topping rivals Penn, Dartmouth, and even Harvard, which saw its investments post a return of just 15%. Just 15%, I'd take it. It's pretty good. But size does matter, even in the Ivy League. Harvard's $36 billion endowment, the biggest of all U.S. schools by far, and far bigger even than Yale's $24 billion portfolio.
Well, if only every college had an endowment that big, the student loan debt crisis might not be as bad as it is now. A new study by credit agency Experian shows that U.S. student loan debt has reached an all-time high of $1.2 trillion. That's up 84% since the 2008 financial downturn. But there's also some good news about student loans. The Department of Education reports that defaults on those loans have declined in the first few years after they came due.
Well, some graduates looking to pay off those loans might be tempted to become entrepreneurs in the growing business of marijuana. But it turns out it is becoming more difficult for small business owners to set up shop selling pot. Kate Rogers takes a look at some of the challenges.
Starting a marijuana business may seem like an opportunity to cash in, but entrepreneurs meeting in New York this week seem to agree. Breaking into the business can be an uphill battle. Megan Sanders runs a company which makes plant-based medicines in Colorado, some of which are cannabis-based.
People don't understand the risk that you take. Personal bank accounts are shut down. It's not just that I can't get a business account, but it's almost impossible to keep your personal accounts open. It was almost impossible for me to refinance my home. I mean, it affects every aspect of your life.
Getting your hands on lucrative licenses, figuring out how to transport your product, and staying in line with tight program restrictions are all hurdles for businesses looking to start up. In places where recreational use has been legalized, the rules are often different from state to state. Also, prepare to be audited and know that your effective tax rate may be as high as 70%, according to New York lawyer Hannon Kolko.
There's also a provision of the IRS Code 280, which forbids entrepreneurs in this business from deducting their business expenses. So they pay a very high effective tax rate. And then finally, there's the uncertainty created by the Controlled Substances Act, where marijuana is a Schedule I controlled drug.
That said, marijuana can be a huge moneymaker for both entrepreneurs and state governments. In fact, a recent study by NerdWallet found that if all 50 states legalized the cannabis biz, their collective take could be more than $3 billion in taxes. And that's why marijuana is generating such a buzz these days. Kate Rogers, Nightly Business Report.
Some more news on entrepreneurs who will open more small businesses this year than in past decades, even though most of them won't survive. One report estimates only 1/3 of small businesses will still be around in 10 years. In the second segment of our series, Small Business Matters, Sharon Epperson reports on one key lesson essential for many small businesses, not just to survive, but thrive. But it can be one of the hardest lessons to master.
Entrepreneur Jason Fried says starting a business isn't hard. The hard part is staying in business. Small businesses often lose focus, even successful ones. His 15-year-old company, 37 Signals, was well known in tech circles for its many software products.
When you're in business for a long time, we've been in business for 15 years, you begin to amass things over time. The mass of your business gets larger and larger and larger. You do more things, you take on more people, you build more products, you expand your product line. Like, there's always more stuff that's happening.
Out of the products offered, one stood out, Basecamp.
So this is Basecamp, and Basecamp is a tool for teams who are working together to keep everything related to a particular project in one central place online. You have a collection of all the discussions, all the files, all the tasks, all the outstanding work, and all the ideas and notes that you need to do to get the job done.
Over the past decade, it has become a global brand.
Basecamp had really been responsible for about 87% of their revenue, about 90% of their growth, web traffic 92, 93%. Clearly, this was the star product. And so they had to make a decision as an executive team. Are we going to spread our focus and try to create a range of products, or are we going to focus on this core product that's doing so well?
And Fried did just that. He streamlined 37 Signals to focus on their most successful product, and he changed the company's name to reflect that product. In February 2014, 37 Signals became Basecamp.
So we decided at the moment of having a great business, let's make this decision now so we can get focused again just on one thing, which is Basecamp, which is our most popular product, which is the one most of our customers use, which is the one that generates most of our revenues and profits.
They have 15 million people who are subscribed to their product. They're continuing to iterate, continuing to make it better.
Yet even with the increasing popularity of its flagship product, the company decided not to expand.
They've turned down over 100 VC offers. They have done everything in their power to keep their business at a certain level of scale. And that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur. When you own your own company, you call the shots.
For us, it's not about chasing huge numbers. We're not here to IPO. We're not here to sell the company. We're not here to try and hit numbers to impress investors. It's really tempting to keep wanting to do more and more and more stuff, but it's really, really hard to do more than one thing well.
Just focusing on one product, one service that you're really good at may be your company's most important selling point. And Fried hopes Basecamp's singular focus will be the key to his company's continued success. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Sharon Epperson.
Sharon's series continues tomorrow with a big decision a financial planner had to make about her small advisory business.
And finally tonight, India celebrating a giant leap in mankind's race to explore space. An Indian spacecraft entered into orbit around Mars today, making it the only Asian nation to reach the red planet, and it didn't spend much money to do so. The price tag, a mere $74 million. That's a fraction of the cost that NASA spent on its latest Mars probe, which cost $670 million. It also cost less than the $100 million Oscar-winning movie Gravity about astronauts stranded in space.
So I was looking to see why it was so cheap for them. Besides the simple design, the people costs in India are much less.
The labor costs are much lower.
Labor costs are lower
than scientists here.
That's Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Susie Garrow. Have a great evening.
And thanks from me as well. I'm Tyler Matheson. We'll hope to see you back here tomorrow night.
I'm Susie Garrow with a Nightly Business Report news brief. Stocks on Wall Street rallied today, bouncing back from 2 straight sessions of big losses, getting help from sales of new homes. They surged 18% in August to a 6-year high. The Dow shot up 154 points, the Nasdaq jumped 46, and the S&P rose 15 points. Wal-Mart is making inroads into financial services by teaming up with Green Dot on a low-cost checking account for customers. Fraudulent charges and cash withdrawals are showing up on credit cards that were stolen at Home Depot stores. Yale beats Harvard, not at football, but investing, topping its Ivy League rival with a 20% return for its endowment versus 15% for Harvard. And India enters the space race, launching a probe into the orbit of Mars. Be sure to tune into Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.